Let me tell you exactly what really happened in that Kentucky courthouse when Sheriff Mickey Stines put a bullet in Judge Kevin Mullins.
There'd be girls sign themselves out and take them on home. It was sick.
The supervisors would take the inmates home for the night?
Yes.
The judge would have sex with inmates from the jail?
Yes.
And you saw it?
Yes. I was part of it. I was one of them.
What did you think when the sheriff shot the judge?
A lot of the corruption was going to come out. He either knew something or something was going on that he knew about that we all might not know about, but he was doing something to protect us.
Did the judge ever say, you have to do this, or if you do this,
you come see me 3 times and we'll take care of this. Come visit me a few times, we'll take care of it.
He would say that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And how many women do you think were also doing this?
Total over the years, hundreds.
While the media was busy spinning this as just another tragic shooting, another isolated incident of violence in small town America, they're deliberately ignoring the real story. And that real story, it's so disturbing. It's so systemic. It's so completely rotten to the core that it exposes everything wrong with our justice system. So here's what they won't tell you.
The judge would have sex with inmates from the jail?
Yes.
And you saw it?
Yes. I was part of it. I was one of them.
How did they keep it a secret?
It wasn't a secret.
Why did you feel like you had to have sex with the judge?
Because he's the one with the power. He holds my entire life in his hands. Not just from being in jail, like coming in off the street and seeing him. He's the one that makes the decisions over whether I get to keep my children or not. He's the one that makes the decisions on whether I go to jail.
This wasn't just a random act of violence. This wasn't a dispute between colleagues that went wrong. This was a father protecting his daughter from a predator in a judge's robe who had been running a sex trafficking operation out of his courtroom. Yes, you heard me right, sex trafficking. In the judge's chambers, with the full knowledge of law enforcement, court staff, and God knows who else in positions of power. So let me break down what's been happening in Letcher County, Kentucky. Judge Kevin Mullins allegedly ran a scheme by which he demanded sexual favors from women to get them out of trouble. But it gets worse. I mean, much worse.
How common was that?
More common than you would want to believe in the court system. When there's policy, once an inmate leaves that jail space, you're not supposed to be in contact with them for 6 months. There'd be girls sign themselves out and take them on home. It was sick.
The supervisors would take the inmates home for the night?
Yes.
Ty Adams said Mullins started introducing me to his friends, the other lawyers, and we would do sex parties and perform shows and have sex with them for money. This wasn't just one corrupt judge. This was an entire network of lawyers, court officials, and law enforcement using their power to exploit vulnerable women. Asked if she felt she could say no to these encounters, Adams said, no, and they would make sure to make you feel as small and degraded and belittled as possible to take your power away. Think about that for a moment. The people sworn to protect and serve, the people we trust with the scales of justice, were systematically destroying lives for their own sexual gratification. But here's where it gets really sick.
Did the judge ever say, you have to do this, or if you do this,
you come see me 3 times and we'll take care of this. Come visit me a few times, we'll take care of it.
He would say that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And how many women do you think were also doing this?
Total over the years, hundreds.
Sarah Davis, a former deputy jailer at Letcher County Jail, told news station the stories she heard about officials using their positions to have sex with inmates were nasty and sickening. She described the jail as a brothel, where staffers had sexual encounters with each other and with inmates.
That it was a brothel. It is all just it's all a brothel. One of the female guards specifically was telling me that one of the places she takes male inmate, and that's where they take them. They get took up into the courthouse, especially after hours late at night, nobody's at work.
Let that sink in. The jail, the place where people are supposed to be rehabilitated, where they're supposed to pay their debt to society, had been turned into a sex den for corrupt officials. And here's what they're really trying to hide. At a preliminary hearing, Kentucky State Police Deputy Clayton Stamper testified that Stines attempted to call his daughter on his phone, then on Mullins' phone. Stines' daughter was stored in Mullins' contacts. Now ask yourself, why would a 54-year-old judge have the sheriff's daughter's phone number saved in his phone? Why would a father, upon discovering this, immediately reach for his gun? The mainstream media wants you to focus on the shooting. They don't want you to asking these questions. How long has this been going on? How many women were victimized? How many cases were decided based on sexual favors instead of actual justice? Who else knew and said nothing? How deep does this corruption go? They want you to see Sheriff Stines as a criminal. I see him as a father who discovered that a predator in a judge's robe had his daughter's phone number.
What would the inmates get in return for having, the leadership?
They're sleeping with the guard. It's mostly for things like cigarettes, time out of the cell, pops, commissary, things like that.
Sheriff Stines went to lunch with Judge Mullins, just like they had done countless times before, but something was different. Something had come to light. Maybe Stines had finally learned about his daughter's involvement in this sick network. Maybe he discovered evidence that this man, this judge who was supposed to represent justice, had been trafficking women, including possibly his own child. So he tested his worst fears. He dialed his daughter's number from District Judge Kevin Mullins' phone, and when that call went through, when he confirmed that this predator had his daughter's contact information, he did what any father would do. He ended the threat. This isn't an isolated incident. This is what happens when power goes unchecked. This is what happens when the people who are supposed to enforce the law think they are the law. Adams said, "Who would believe it anyway? Because the whole town was doing it. Nobody cares. They're all swingers. It's all a big party to them. It was just so normal." Did you catch that? The whole town was involved. This wasn't just one bad judge. This was systematic corruption involving lawyers, law enforcement, court staff, and who knows who else. Think about how many cases this judge decided. Think about how many women faced him in that courtroom knowing they had two choices: submit to his demands or face the full weight of a corrupt system. Think about how many innocent people went to jail because they wouldn't play his sick games, while criminals walked free because they would. This is what justice looks like when the system is completely rotten. And here's what makes me absolutely furious. The mainstream media is more concerned with protecting the reputation of the judiciary than they are with exposing the truth about what these women went through. They're more worried about maintaining the illusion that our courts are fair and just than they are about acknowledging that some of our judges are predators in robes. They'd rather paint Sheriff Stines as a murderer than acknowledge he might have been a father protecting his child from a sex trafficking ring.
What did you think when the sheriff shot the judge?
A lot of the corruption was going to come out. He either knew something or something was going on that he knew about that we all might not know about, that he was doing something to protect us.
Let me ask you something. If you discovered that a judge, a man with the power to destroy lives with the bang of a gavel, had your daughter's phone number saved in his contacts, and you knew what he'd been doing to other women, what would you do? Would you trust the system to handle it? The same system that allowed this to go on for God knows how long. Would you file a complaint with the same authorities who are attending these sex parties? Would you wait for the same media that's now covering up the real story to investigate? Or would you handle it yourself? That's exactly what Sheriff Stines did, and now they want to destroy him for it. Here's what they're really afraid of. If that story gets out, if people understand what was really happening in that Kentucky courthouse, it destroys the entire narrative about trusting our institutions. It proves that the people we're told to respect, the people in positions of authority, are often the most corrupt of them all. It shows that sometimes the only justice you get is the justice you take. They want you to believe that this is rare, this is an exception. But let me ask you, how many other courthouses have judges with this kind of power? How many other small towns have networks of corrupt officials? How many other Sheriff Stines are out there discovering that the system they swore to serve had been preying on their families? This isn't rare. This is what happens when power operates in the shadows, when people in authority think they're untouchable, when the system protects itself instead of the people. The real scandal isn't that Sheriff Stines shot Judge Mullins. The real scandal is how long this went on without anybody stopping it. 3 days before Mullins' death, Stines gave a deposition in a civil case brought by Sabrina Atkins, alleging women under house arrest were extorted for sexual favors in exchange for more lenient treatment. Think about that timeline. 3 days before the shooting, Stines was forced to give testimony about these allegations. 3 days later, he discovered his daughter's number in the judge's phone. That's not a coincidence. That's a father putting the pieces together and realizing the monster he'd been working alongside had been targeting his own child. And here's what makes this even more disgusting. The system knew. Davis said she was aware of Mullins having sex with inmates. That's kind of the thing that everybody in the county knows. Everybody knew, and everyone stayed quiet. Why? Because they were either participating in it, profiting from it, or too scared to speak up. This is what happens when corruption becomes normalized. This is what happens when people in power think they can get away with anything because they control the system that's supposed to hold them accountable. But here's what they didn't count on. They didn't count on a father who loved his daughter more than he feared the consequences. They didn't count on Sheriff Mickey Stines. Now they want to make him pay for cleaning up their mess. They want to put him in prison for doing what the system wouldn't do, stopping a predator. They want to silence him before he can tell the whole truth about what was happening in that courthouse. They want to make an example out of him so that the next Sheriff Stines will think twice before protecting his family. But here's what I want you to understand. Every day you read about corruption in our courts, about judges taking bribes, about prosecutors hiding evidence, about law enforcement covering up crimes. This Kentucky case isn't unusual because it happened. It's unusual because someone finally did something about it. And for that, they want to destroy him. The truth is that our institutions are only as good as the people in them. And when those people are predators, when those people are corrupt, when those people think they're above the law, the institution becomes a weapon against the very people it's supposed to protect. Judge Mullins thought he was untouchable. He thought his robe protected him. He thought his position gave him the right to destroy women's lives for his own sick pleasure. He was wrong. Sheriff Stines proved that no one, not even a judge, is above justice. Remember the women who were victimized. Remember the system that failed to protect them. Remember the father who finally said, enough. And ask yourself, who are the real criminals in this story? The judge who trafficked women out of his courthouse, the system that allowed it to continue, or the officials who knew and stayed silent? Or the sheriff who finally stopped it? That's the question they don't want you asking. That's the truth they don't want you to uncover. Wake up. This is not about one shooting in one small town. This is about what happens when good people finally have had enough of evil people in positions of power. This is what happens when someone chooses justice over career, family over fear, doing right over staying quiet. This is about what happens when finally someone fights back. And that's exactly why they want to bury this story. Don't let them.